Do you think they did Diddy wrong? Or
Of course.
You said he did everything that everybody's doing.
Of course. He got a freako.
But the
You ever heard of a Rico by your damn self?
The 500 dildos.
It's a freako.
500 dildos
I don't give a damn. You're a freak. I don't give a damn. If I want my bitch to watch, if I want my bitch to get another dick while I watch, while money going everywhere, call another dick up, go buy her something after that. I don't look at it like it's a crime. Freako. You're just freaky. He did what? Met a girl at the studio and they ran a train and he put dick on her and flew her out. Is that a crime? Freak. I just was thinking of all the stuff he was charged for. God damn, he freaky. This man, he don't deserve, you don't give him a bond? Who did he fucking, bro, it's a black billionaire, bro. Mm-hmm. Gonna be hard on him. That's why, because he's a successful black man. That's why. And they fucking over him.
You said I feel Diddy in jail for basically doing what every other famous entertainer
Every other rapper, you gotta understand, and they building this case on Diddy to get all us on the back end. Cause everybody gonna fly out. How you think we gonna see a bitch? You gotta fly out. Every bitch we fly in, every bitch you fly in, you gonna give her something. A little $1,000 before she go home. That is sex trafficking.
Right.
You gotta watch who you fly in. They didn't flip this rule to take all us down, and nobody sees it. You can't be too freaky now.
Right.
They didn't flip this around to take all us down. Mm-hmm. Cause when Mad Day come, when you flew that bitch out, when she called back and tried to extort you.
Good evening, gentlemen, and a few of you ladies that may be listening. This is Spiritual Art of War, back at it again with another episode. As I said before, that I will do a follow-up after the verdict has come out. And now we know exactly what is going on with Sean P. Diddy or Puff Daddy Combs. For some of y'all that know the different monikers and AKAs that he's had in time past. Because, we know that there's a lot of younger people, Gen Z, that didn't really grow up and understand the influence that Diddy had in pop culture in the 90s and the early 2000s. Okay, so this is actually for a lot of people that are millennials and older. This is somebody that, those of us grew up on. So this is something that we kind of understand where he's been and kind of where he's gone in time past and how he's doing now. And we've always known, at least going back, once you kind of got to like around the early 2000s, there was always speculation and rumor about Diddy and, what he's into. But there was nothing that ever verified. But people always make jokes about, be careful with Diddy or be careful going to Diddy's parties. That was going on for the last 15 to 20 years. And even if 50 Cent has always kind of made jokes alluding to that in regards to Diddy. And it just so happens that his baby mama was involved in the case. So let's go ahead and go into it. When you go into the case, he had some charges, the main one being the Rico. He had 5 counts that he was fighting. He was convicted on 2 of the 5 counts. Now, first, we're gonna deal with the 3 counts that he was found not guilty of, and that would be the major count, which is the Rico charge, the racketeering conspiracy, found not guilty. He also had 2 sex trafficking, of Cassie Ventura and sex trafficking of Jane. And those were also found not guilty. That Jane Doe is Daphne Joy, who is 50 Cent's baby mama. Go back to prior videos and on the channel to go more into the issue of that case during that time and what was found out concerning that. Now, the 2 that he was convicted of, the 2 of the 5 that he was convicted of were on the 2 transportation of both Cassie Ventura and a transportation of Jane Doe, as sex workers to engage in prostitution. Now, the ones that he was paying to engage in prostitution wasn't the women themselves, but the male escorts. So that's what he was found guilty of. Now, here's the thing, like I stated before, what he's found guilty or not guilty of is going to determine how these high profile men, particularly athletes and entertainers, because these are the ones that are the high profile, they're the big fish, they're the ones that the DAs really want. They don't really care about the real estate guy who's worth $50 million and he sells real estate in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he drives, the brand new, Lamborghini model to the club every Saturday. They don't care about that guy on a federal level, not as much as they do these kind of guys. Because remember that these federal prosecutors, they make money. They make money off of these cases, of course, but and it's there's a whole conspiracy behind all about that. But this is how they make a name. Okay, if you want to end up being, let's say they want to retire as a federal prosecutor, they want to be on a CNN. They want to be a correspondent. They want to be able to have in their bio as being the one that took down this particular person, right? You even have it within those circles of the federal judges and prosecutors, they have the legends among them, the ones that did the John Gotti case and took down the Italian mob. And, those are the ones that made their name in those times, right? So people try to make a name again. But again, because you have a jury of your peers, if you have a good lawyer, you're able to refute some of the evidence, you're able to present your case, then you may be able to cast doubt in the jurors, and by a small chance, might be able to beat the feds, who are damn near unbeatable. Okay, their conviction rate is like in a high 90th percentile when it comes to Fed cases, because they tend to be very thorough in their investigation. But a lot of times they're more thorough because it takes years to bring up the case. In the event of Diddy, I think the reason why they had a harder time because this was so quick, right? Meaning like it was something that they jumped on. They had enough information to bring the charges, but to bring a solid conviction, it was a little bit harder. Plus, the woman incriminated themselves based off of their text messages, which is the communication that he had with Jane Doe, a.k.a. or also known as Daphne Joy, and also Cassie Ventura. So that kind of cast doubt in those charges, hence the reason why those particular charges were dropped. But the two charges for transportation for prostitution, that's what he was found guilty on. Now, let me go into what this transportation for prostitution is. It is an act of knowingly moving someone across state or international borders with the intent that they engage in prostitution or other criminal sex activity. This is a federal offense under the Mann Act. Okay? So that is what he was found guilty of. So if you saw the clip earlier, I have the clip of Boosie talking to the guy from, I think his name is Jason, from Hollywood Unlocked. That is the concern for a man like Boosie and other entertainers like him, of them flying women out to another state to have fun. Okay? So to have Babylonian fun, that is. And so that's what they're concerned with. So he is found guilty of that. And that kind of brings into play, like, hold on. These men are now going to be very careful with flying women out because they can always women will always leverage whatever they can to their advantage to get what they want out of you. So now if a ball player or an entertainer flies out a woman across state lines to hook up with her, and she will leverage that to extort him. Hey, I'll get the feds on you because you flew me out to Florida and I'm from Georgia, or I'm from Texas and you flew me out to California, and they know, hey, I can leverage this against you on a Fed case. Now, hey, you got to give me $50,000. So it's something that they would want to be careful about, and that's the reason why he's pissed off, because at the end of the day, it's still something that these men are realizing that they can get in trouble for. Even though this was on the books for a long time, it was used against Jack Johnson, the boxer from Texas, the black boxer, the heavyweight champion, who during Jim Crow segregation was dealing with white women, which was crazy. And he was openly doing it, and he was threatened that many times, but he was able to find his way around it somehow. Maybe because he was a high profile athlete, and it made it harder for the lynch mobs to want to attack him because it would bring too much heat on them. So they kind of, I guess you could say, let it slide. But what happened was the feds had a way to do it. And the Mann Act was called the White Slave Act, which was just, you got to look it up. I'm not going to go into it, but that's what they were worried about, was white women being taken across state lines for sexual activities. And also really they were worried about black men having access to white women. That's really part of the history. If you read about certain Reconstruction era, you can go back to like North Carolina, which had, very successful black towns, businesses. Wilmington, one of them. You had black officials during Reconstruction. This is before Jim Crow was brought in. And you had men that were dealing with white women. Okay, black men that were marrying and dealing with white women in these places because you had a sizable, well-off black population in some of those towns that were doing fairly well during Reconstruction because they had skills to build businesses. So there's a history behind this stuff. This is why I have my channel. So a lot of you young guys that will talk about racial dynamics, I'm sorry, that's what it was. And a lot of times you're born in this time and you don't realize the evolution of where we got to where we're at now. And even though the two individual women were not classified as white, the original reason why Mann Act was created was for the sake of protecting so-called white women, because they weren't charging white men with doing that, taking women across state lines. They weren't doing that when they had slavery. You had Thomas Jefferson taking his, I forgot her name, but he had a little slave wench that he was dealing with, and that was something that was very common. Okay, they had resorts where they would take them, like out up the Mississippi River to Ohio. Okay, where they would take their slave mistresses and the children that they had with them as like a getaway from the rest of the family. You see, I don't know about this stuff. Stuff gets really deep, but those weren't considered like bad. So there's always a reason why some of these laws are here. There's a reason why, prostitution is illegal in the United States, but it's not in most of Europe, and it's really heavily decriminalized throughout many parts of the world, in Latin America, the rest of the Americas, parts of Asia. You see Thailand openly, but they have like different lower regulation for it, of course, but US there's a lot of tight knitness about it, especially considering how liberal and lax this society is. People always wonder why they still have these barriers or have these laws, and it's because of the history. Again, it's because of the history of the country. And this is what people don't understand. They don't ask themselves, why is it when they go to Netherlands, there's a whole red light district? Why are there whole brothel clubs in Germany? If you've ever traveled or talked to anybody that's traveled to these different places, these exist and they're legal. Okay, but in America, illegal. Okay, so it is what it is. So that's what it is. Now, what's going to happen? Diddy is going to, he sought a bail, but the bail was rejected, which is okay because, he has a date for the sentencing date is going to be October 3rd. So that will add more months to his total, depending on what he gets as far as the sentence. He's facing up to 10 years for each conviction. However, the convictions will run concurrently, meaning they will not be stacked on one another. So based off of that, they're looking into figuring out how many months he should get, because that's how they do it in the feds. They talk about it in regards to months. The defense is proposing as low as 21 months, and the prosecution, I believe, is pushing towards like 50 something months, 50 to 60 months. So if he gets the lower end, then he would be free pretty much by October, because they could do time served. There'll be time served and he already had reduced that. So the speculation that Diddy's free and he's off, he's free. No, he's just free of the big case, the Rico, but he could still face some significant time in prison, but no more than 10 years, of course. And I think I can't really say what they're going to do because they're already trying to build up why they should give him more years or the max based off of the act of violence that was shown on video in 2016 at the International Hotel, and based off of the threats that he's made towards different people. Although they couldn't prove, I think, the Kid Cudi thing, they said that there was validation that there was different levels of threat according to Cassie. And, he doesn't have any other prior convictions. So I think it's going to be hard for them to give him the max. And usually they do like some kind of a point system. And this is where his attorneys will come into play heavily in regards to the sentencing. They'll have more than enough time to present the reason why he should receive reduced. And I think the main thing is going to be he has no prior convictions. If he had prior convictions, that's one thing, but he doesn't. So you could probably chop at least that in half. I'd be surprised if they give him anything more than 5 years. But they could give more. But 5 years seems to be about the fair max that they should give him based on lack of prior conviction. It is a lesser charge, and he did not get guilty of racketeering, but this is something that he is, he's an older man, but if he gets 5 years and he's already served about 2, he'll be out in 2 to 3 years. That might not be bad for him. You know what I'm saying? So that could be something that he could be looking to. But right now they put him in the Fed spot where he's being held out there in Brooklyn. And I'm pretty sure that his family is relieved. I'm pretty sure that they've been told that, hey, expect him to be, either home or only in for few years. And he's going to keep a lot of his money, too. He does have some civil cases that are actually being looked into. So he has some civil cases he still has to fight. So he has some money that he's still going to probably have to shell out to some more so-called victims. But he can still fight some of those civil cases. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to, do what he needs to do. Cassie's going to be the one that's going to get the most. There's nobody else who's really going to be able to get as much money as Cassie got, because Cassie was his longtime girlfriend. She was also put up with a lot of the antics for a lot of years. And then she had the beating on tape. That's going to make her even seen as more of a victim. So these criminal cases, these civil cases should be very easy for him to handle. He has a lot of money, even though he lost a lot of money. He still has a lot of money. I mean, the fact that he paid off his $50 million mansion in Miami on Star Island lets you know he got a bag. He got a major bag. He's still up a few $100 million, okay? And I think that if he does get out, fast forwarding, I think that a lot of celebrities are going to embrace him. I think some of them are going to stay away from him. But I think there's going to be a certain amount of people, because I think everybody likes a comeback story. They like somebody that beat the odds. And I think that Diddy is going to have, a second wind if he plays it, the right way, so to speak. And I think that, I think I'll probably have to go into another one. I might have to do a second video of what I think about what this Diddy situation means from a cultural perspective, and all the information that came out, and what I think how things are going to be kind of looked at going forward in regards to people's relationships in this country, man, because I think people are going to start looking at things some type of way. But other than that, man, that's pretty much what it is. I don't think there's going to be any need to, unless there's any information that comes out in between now and the sentencing date. I don't think there's much to really say about his case, unless any new information comes up about, what happened with the deliberation with the jury and why they said not guilty or guilty. But I think the main thing to look at from a social dynamic perspective is the transportation for prostitution. That is going to be something that those getting flued out, that probably should come to a stop. Because I don't think it's worth the risk of getting a Fed case for something like that. And remember, he was paying the males to do it. And remember, Cassie was selecting them, booking them, and paying them as well. But she didn't get charged. But you know how that is. You know how the system is. So they're not going to persecute a woman for something like that. Heck, they have a hard time even getting at madams, you know what I'm saying, in these type of situations. So, but we'll have to kind of wait and see what's going to go on. So, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with this particular episode. Let me know what you think in the comments. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next episode.